The Milwaukee Bucks season has ended, and I'm going to tell you guys why I believe it is finally time for Giannis Antetokounmpo and for the Milwaukee Bucks to part ways and for Giannis Antetokounmpo to finally ask for a trade. But before we get started on that, I want to tell you guys to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share, and to continue to support my channel. Yeah, the Milwaukee Bucks season is over. You know, they were eliminated by the Indiana Pacers in a wild finish to a basketball game. You know, the Pacers ended up winning the game 119-118 in overtime, and just the unbelievable collapse by the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, for those of y'all that haven't like watched the game, you know, the Milwaukee Bucks were up 7 points. It was 118-111 with like 40 seconds left, and it looked like the Bucks were really gonna hold control and win the game. And then you saw Andrew Nembhard hit a three, and he cut the deficit from 118-114. And then the Bucks get the ball, and then Gary Trent Jr., who, by the way, had a fantastic game, he turns the ball over. The ball gets back to Indiana. Tyrese Halliburton gets the ball, drives to the rim with his left hand, scores on an and one, gets fouled. So he makes the free throw, and it's 118-117. And then the Bucks get the ball again, and Gary Trent Jr. gets the ball, and he loses it, and he goes out of bounds. And then the Pacers get the ball back, and then Tyrese Halliburton crosses over Giannis, drives, takes him to the basket, and makes the layup with his right hand, and which ends up being the game-winning layup for the Indiana Pacers to close the deal. And then after the game, you know, we see Giannis Antetokounmpo get into it with, turns out to be Tyrese Halliburton's dad. And we see Tyrese Halliburton's dad try to gets in Giannis's face. I guess he's talking junk to him or something, just letting him hear it about how, you know, Halliburton hit the game winner over him, and then Giannis understandably was frustrated. You know, he didn't want to deal with Tyrese Halliburton's dad, and Giannis ends up getting into a little bit of another scuffle with, I think it was Benefit Mathurin. And so, I mean, look, man, I don't want to get too much into the situation, but I think it's a little bit of it's a bad look for Tyrese Halliburton's dad to, you know, get into it with Giannis and talking junk to him. I mean, come on, man. I mean, really? I mean, you know, you're not supposed to do that, man. You gotta have some professionalism or something. You know what I'm saying? And so, but that ended up being what that was. You know, the Bucks lost, and overall, I want to get into this topic. And it's something that's been talked about throughout the entirety of the season. You know, what's going to happen with Giannis? What are the Milwaukee Bucks going to do? What's going to happen if the Bucks don't go on a deep playoff run? And, you know, look, for the Bucks, look, Damian Lillard, you know, he had the blood clot thing. He comes back. He plays a couple of games, and then all of a sudden he tore his Achilles. And I want to wish my well wishes to Damian Lillard on that front, and he's gonna miss he's gonna most likely, in my opinion, he's gonna miss most of next season, if not the entirety of next season. And so that's not good. That's brutal news for him, which again, man, it brings me to this hard conversation that is going to be had this offseason, and it needs to be had. And that reality is this: it's time. It's time. It's time. It's time. It's time for the Milwaukee Bucks, and it's time for Giannis Antetokounmpo to part ways. It's time for Giannis Antetokounmpo to go to the Bucks organization and say, you know what, man, I gave it all I had. I gave you guys a championship. It was a well-earned championship. I gave you guys, 12 years I think 12 years, 12, 13 years in that organization. And we've had a lot of great moments. And like I said, we won a championship. But it's time, because there's just nowhere else to go. There's no other path that we can move forward with as far as competing for a championship. And I think that's the path that Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to have to take with this Bucks organization. Look, it's going to be hard. There's going to be some hard conversations this summer because, like I said, Giannis has been with this franchise for 12 to 13 years. And Milwaukee is all that Giannis knows. And look, for athletes, it's always the saying, like, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Like we saw it with Damian Lillard. You know, everybody was begging for this man to leave Portland. Begging for him to leave Portland, and Dame didn't want to do it until he was forced to. And we see what happened when Dame left Portland to go to Milwaukee. Outside of his control, things just haven't worked out for Dame. And so it's going to be hard for Giannis to accept that reality that if he does get moved, things might not work out in his favor. But when I look at where the Bucks are as a franchise, I mean, look at their draft pick situation, people. They don't own a first-round pick until 2031. That is 6 years. They don't have a pick to use to draft or to use in a trade. And so it's just going to be hard for them to upgrade their team. They don't have a lot of young talent. Damian Lillard getting injured and tearing his Achilles makes it even worse for them. And so, like, they traded for Kyle Kuzma. That doesn't look like a good trade, considering that Kyle Kuzma over the last 2 games of this series didn't play much. You know, you look at the Bucks roster, Brook Lopez, you know, throughout the entirety of that series was played off the floor because he's old and slow and he couldn't handle the fast pace and spacing that the Indiana Pacers were playing with. And so, like, he couldn't play as much. Like I said, Kyle Kuzma wasn't providing them much anything. You look at the starting lineup that the Bucks had in the final game of this series. It was Giannis at the 5. It was Bobby Portis. It was AC Green. It was Gary Trent Jr. and Kevin Porter Jr. I mean, man. And look, I don't want to disrespect any of those guys, but it's not the lineup that inspires that, man, I can win a championship with. Like, it just doesn't. And so it's just, and you just look at where the Bucks are at. Like, it's clear looking at their team that they're too old, they're slow, they're not athletic. And if you look at the teams in the East, and this is just the Eastern Conference, you know, you got Boston, who's just in their prime, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Porzingis, just young, athletic, long, versatile. Cleveland, you know, young, athletic, young, versatile. You know, the Knicks, the Pacers, you know, the Orlando Magic, even though they lost in the first round, they're going to get better. They're going to add some shooting to that roster. You know, my Hawks, I believe the Atlanta Hawks are going to get better as they get more young, as they get more experience, and they add more veteran pieces to their team. You know, you got I'm trying to excuse my train of thought here, but the Miami Heat could get better. Whoever gets Cooper Flag in the Eastern Conference, they're going to get better. The Detroit Pistons, I forgot to mention them. I apologize. With Cade Cunningham, they're going to get better. And so you got these young upstart teams that are going to get better. And you look at the Milwaukee Bucks, and they're just getting old by the wayside, and they're not getting better. And they don't have the assets and the young pieces to improve their team. And so that's why I think it's time for Giannis to ask out of Milwaukee. It's going to be a hard conversation. It's going to be hard. but I think it's necessary. And I think for Giannis Antetokounmpo, if his mindset is, man, I want to win championships. One championship isn't enough. I want to compete for championships. If that's his mindset, it's not going to happen in Milwaukee. It just isn't. And I think it's going to come a point where this summer, he's going to have to reach this conclusion that he is going to absolutely ask out. It has to happen. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough for him to leave. It's going to be tough for him to move his family. It's going to be tough for all of that. But I also think it's necessary for Giannis Antetokounmpo. And look, I love Giannis, man. I love him. You know, as an Atlanta Hawk fan, there was a time when my Hawks was actually interested in drafting Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's when that was before I even knew that Giannis was actually going to become Giannis. And so back when that was happening, I was like, he's an interesting dude, interesting prospect. You know, and so I was kind of intrigued as to what this dude would become. And then as he went to Milwaukee and as his game grew, you just realize that, man, this dude is a physical monster. And you watch how hard this dude plays. I mean, it's ridiculous how hard this dude plays. This guy is averaging 30, 20, and 10 some nights. And if you look at how it's been happening for the Bucks lately, like Giannis has been putting up these big numbers, and it hasn't mattered. It hasn't equated to wins because Giannis just doesn't have much around him. Giannis in this series was averaging over 30 points, 10 rebounds, and nearly 10 assists on 50+% shooting, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter. And it was hard to watch Giannis be out there on his lonesome in this series. You know, and look, I know he won a championship, but it felt a little like Kevin Garnett in Minnesota back in the early 2000s to me. Like, that's how it felt watching Giannis. And it's just, like, you watch this dude give it all he has, plays with the amount of intensity and heart and grit and just everything. Like, man, I enjoy watching Giannis play basketball. And so I think, to me, as basketball fans, I want to see Giannis on a better team, on a team that can compete for a championship. I want to see it. And I think we are going to see it this offseason because I believe it's finally come for Giannis to ask for a trade and ask out. And I think it's time for the Milwaukee Bucks to accept the reality of their situation, to understand where they're at. Because they can't move forward. The Bucks need to come to the realization they cannot move forward with their situation until they move Giannis. Not necessarily that Giannis is a problem, but they don't have any avenues to improve their team. They have no avenues to improve their team. The guys that they're going to trade, no one wants. No one's going to give up anything great for them. And with the picks that they've given up, it would be bad to give up more draft capital to upgrade your team that's not going to lead you any further than you already are. And that's just kind of where it is for the Milwaukee Bucks. And so, look, assuming that Giannis does ask out, here's a question that I'm gonna ask. Where's the best fit for Giannis if he does ask out? You know? Well, who's the team that makes a lot of sense for Giannis? What team should he go to? Who's the best fit? Who has the best assets? And so, you know, I got a couple of teams in mind that I look at and say, okay, what team should go after Giannis? And what team actually has the best stuff to get Giannis? Because in the event that the Bucks do move Giannis, you better believe they're going to ask for everything. They're going to ask for like 4 to 5 unprotected first-round picks. They're going to ask for at least 2, possibly 3 of your key important young players and assets. And they're going to ask for the kitchen sink. They're going to ask for the moon and the stars and the sun. They're going to ask for it all. And so best believe the Bucks are going to ask for everything in the event that they do move Giannis Antetokounmpo. So who would be the best fit for him? You know, a couple of teams that stand out to me when it comes to fit for Giannis. Number one, and look, I'm going to say this. This team, but NBA fans that want to get Giannis Antetokounmpo, y'all better pray that the Oklahoma City Thunder win the championship. That's right. Y'all better pray that the Oklahoma City Thunder win the NBA championship. Because if they don't, if they fall short and they lose early in the playoffs, if they lose in the second round or third or conference finals or even in the NBA finals, I believe, in my opinion, that the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to make a run at Giannis Antetokounmpo. They're going to make a run at Giannis if they don't win the championship. Because there's no team in the NBA that has as much picks and young talent to offer for Giannis more than the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have a lot to offer. They could offer, look, they're not going to trade Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like, we know that for a fact. And I would bet that they probably wouldn't trade Chet Holmgren either, even though you can debate it. And so I would imagine that Shai is definitely going to be a keeper. And I would probably say Chet would be a keeper as well, because I think he has a little more upside than a guy like Jalen Williams. But I think they will offer Jalen Williams, because Jalen Williams, like, he was an all-star this year, and he might make an all-NBA team. And so I think he would be in the offering. You know, you got guys like Cason Wallace. You got Isaiah Hartenstein. You got Alex Caruso. You got Lou Dort. And we all know they got a whole bunch of picks. A whole bunch of them. And so the Oklahoma City Thunder, if they don't win the NBA championship, they're going to go after Giannis Antetokounmpo this summer. You better book it. I believe that. And so they're the team, to me, like if the Oklahoma City Thunder wanted Giannis Antetokounmpo, they could get him above any of these teams. And so I think they're a team that I think you got to keep your eye on for sure. I think the other team that I think you got to keep your eye on as far as going after Giannis Antetokounmpo, as far as Giannis Antetokounmpo, are the San Antonio Spurs. They got picks to offer as well. You know, they got those Hawks picks. They got the 14th pick in this year's draft. They got their own pick, which is 8th. And who knows, that pick might even go up, depending on the draft lottery. You know, that pick could be in the top 4, which would make their pick capital even more attractive. And so, you know, they got that pick. They got the Hawks pick in 2027. They got their own picks. I think they have, like, Dallas's pick. In, like, 2028, they have, I think, a Chicago Bulls pick. They got Boston's pick. They got a bunch of picks in San Antonio. And then you got a guy like Stephon Castle, who ended up being Rookie of the Year. You know, look, I don't want to comment on that award, because we all know that award should have went to Zachary Richeche. I'm sorry, I don't care how y'all feel, but that's the truth. That the Rookie of the Year should have been Zachary Richeche. Yeah, I said I don't care, I'm a Hawks fan. That's how I feel. Now back to the subject. And so you got Stephon Castle. You know, you got dang. You got, you know, Harrison Barnes' contract. You know, you got dang. I think you got like Keldon Johnson. You got Sohan. And so they got some interesting young talent, and plus all those picks. And so I think they're a team that I think you got to look at as far as a Giannis team, because look, man, you put Giannis with Wemby and De'Aaron Fox. I mean, that's a interesting, scary team. You know, who's gonna score on that? And then you got the versatility of Giannis and Wemby. I mean, that's an interesting team right there. And so I think San Antonio is a team that you got to look at as well. You know, I know people have thrown out the Brooklyn Nets. You know, they got all the cap space in the world, and they got a bunch of picks. They got their own picks, and they got the New York Knicks picks. And so I can't completely dismiss them. I know the Houston Rockets is a popular team, and Houston has a lot of draft capital as well, and they got young talent. But I'll be honest, man. I don't know about the Houston fit. I don't know about Houston with Giannis. I don't know. Like Giannis and Sengun in the front court. I don't know, man. I don't know about that. You don't Giannis with Jalen Green. I don't know. Like, look, I don't want to completely dismiss Houston because they have a lot of draft capital as well and young talent. But, I think Houston needs a bucket getter. I think if I were Houston, I think Houston's dream is to get Devin Booker. Now, look, I don't know if Phoenix is going to move Devin Booker. But I don't honestly, I think Houston makes more sense for Kevin Durant than Giannis, in my opinion. And so, that's just obviously that's a team that people keep mentioning. Look, out in my dream, would I would love the city of Atlanta, my Hawks get in on Giannis? Absolutely. But the problem for the Hawks is, what the Bucks are gonna ask for, for Giannis. I think the Hawks just where the Hawks are right now. Like, if I'm the Hawks, like the only package that I would get that I will offer to get Giannis is Jalen Johnson, salary, and picks. That's the most I will offer. But here's the problem with that. I don't think the Milwaukee Bucks are gonna go for that. And if I'm the Hawks, like I don't want to trade Dyson Daniels. Like, heck no. We need Dyson Daniels. We need his perimeter defense next to Trae Young. So I don't want to offer Dyson Daniels. I don't want to offer Zachary Richie, and with Jalen. Like, I don't want to do that because we need Zachary Richie's size and shooting. I don't even want to offer Antetokounmpo. I think Onyeka with Giannis is a perfect fit. And so and that's the thing. Like, I think the Bucks would ask for 2 or 3 of those guys. Plus, Jalen, and the Hawks don't have a lot of picks. And so, look, I know Hawk fans want Giannis, and I get it, but I'm being as objective as possible that I don't see the pathway for my Hawks to get Giannis, unfortunately. Like, I just don't see it. And so, but, when I look at the Giannis teams that I think would make the best sense as far as getting Giannis, I think teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder and the San Antonio Spurs, I think those are the top 2 teams that I think make a lot of sense. And I think those 2 teams have a lot of assets to offer. The Brooklyn Nets, if you squint your eyes, you can kind of see it. The Houston Rockets, I know they have a lot of stuff. If I had to toss out a sleeper team, I think a team like the Memphis Grizzlies, would be interesting. Because I think Memphis they clearly need to change something with their roster. I don't think their roster is good enough. Could they offer Jaren Jackson, and picks and stuff? Maybe they offer Ja Morant, even though I'm sure Memphis Grizzlies fans would probably hate that, but who knows? And so, look, I think my top 2 teams for Giannis, if I had to pick 2 best teams, I would probably say the Oklahoma City Thunder and the San Antonio Spurs. Like, those are probably the top 2 teams on my list of like where I think Giannis could go and where he makes the best sense. But whatever the case may be, look, man, when it comes to Giannis, look, man, he's had a great career with the Milwaukee Bucks. He's had a lot of great moments. The NBA Finals championship was awesome, in 2021. But I think when push comes to shove, the Bucks just haven't been the same. Like I said, they traded. And look, it's not like the Bucks have made bad decisions. Getting Drew Holiday was a huge move. When they traded Eric Bledsoe to get Drew Holiday to pair him with Giannis and Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton, like, they won a championship with that core. And so that was a great move, getting Drew Holiday. And then, they realized, like, okay, we weren't as good offensively anymore, so we wanted to take a swing and get Damian Lillard. And, look, I think in reality, like, that hasn't worked as well, in part because of some bad luck and injuries, but also, you know, even though the Bucks have made some pretty nice moves, they've made some mistakes as well. You know, you look at their drafts, you know, since 2018, they haven't had a lot of hits. You know, they have not drafted well. And to have sustained success in the NBA, you know, especially, you know, when you are spending a lot of money and over the luxury tax, like, you got to draft well. And they just haven't been able to do it in recent years. And I think that's been costly as well. And so, I mean, they've had some bad luck, but they've also haven't drafted well. And it's just kind of where it is. You know, all good runs don't happen forever. And I think what we're seeing with the Milwaukee Bucks is, you know, their run is running out. You know, it's coming to an end. And so, you know, look, the reality is this, you know, for the Milwaukee Bucks and for Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think when they meet this summer and when they have these hard conversations, I think ultimately it's going to be best that Giannis Antetokounmpo and that the Milwaukee Bucks will be best served if they part ways from each other, and that Giannis realizes that his best chance to win an NBA championship will be elsewhere and not the Milwaukee Bucks.